This is a Pontiac Aztek. When the Aztek came out back in 2001, it was considered one of the strangest, most bizarre, weirdest, and ugliest vehicles ever manufactured by General Motors. Today, more than 15 years later, I'm starting to think it's kind of cool. This particular Aztek is a 2005 model from the car's final model year, and today I've borrowed it from a viewer here in Pennsylvania to give you a glimpse into Aztek life. First, I'm going to give you a thorough tour of the Aztek and show you all of its quirks and features, and then I'm going to get it out on the road and tell you how it drives. And finally, I'm going to give it a Doug score. But first, a little overview of the Aztek. The Aztek was sold for 5 years, from 2001 to 2005, at a time when General Motors was desperately trying to convince people that they were cool and hip, even though they had spent the last decade making cars from 5 different brands that looked identical. Every Aztek had a 185 horsepower 3.4-liter V6, which was considered underpowered even at the time, and of course, every Aztek had the same shape, which was considered to be tremendously ugly by every car magazine, every newspaper, every human with eyes. The ugliest was the 2001 model year. The entire bottom half of the car was taken up with gray plastic cladding, and they had 3-spoke wheel options. 3-spoke hubcaps for the base model, or for the upscale one, 3-spoke alloys. It wasn't pretty. Pontiac did away with the cladding and those stupid wheels after the first year, but it was too late. The damage was done. The Aztek was already branded weird and unattractive. The Aztek started at $22,000 back in 2001. It had a huge price cut the next year in order to try and get more people to buy it, but that didn't really work. Fun fact, the Aztek had a luxury version. It was called the Buick Rendezvous, and while it didn't share the same weird styling, it did have the same platform, the same architecture, and the same powertrain. Anyway, on to the quirks and features. I'm going to start with maybe the strangest quirk of this car, and that would be its name. That's Aztek, not Aztec. Aztec, Aztek was the ancient civilization. The car has a K, like killer whale or knife point. Now, when I did my Doug car competition, you people recommended cars for me, more people spelled Aztek wrong than right when they were recommending it. And I know on the comments, everybody's going to spell it with a C and think they're funny, but just going forward, Aztek is spelled with a K. Also, Camaro, C-A-M-A-R-O. Not C-A-M-E-R-O, since we're doing car spelling. Now, the Aztek is all about versatility, and so I'm going to start back here and maybe the most versatile part. To open the back, it's split. You open this bit first, it comes up, and then you open the bottom part. Now check out the bottom part. You put it down, and there are 2 seats back here. It's a bench, so you can just hang out on your Aztek and sit here. Some of them had a radio with speakers back here, so you could even listen to music. And there are even cup holders in the tailgate, so you can just sit here and hang out and tailgate in your Aztek. You think a bench in the tailgate is cool? Well, check out this. This just looks like a normal center console and center control stack to you, doesn't it? Well, you're wrong, because right here, there's a cooler. When it's in place, it's just part of the center console, but you can pull it out and actually use it to store drinks. And take a look inside. Now, on the outside of the cooler, it says Aztek on the top, and it even has the Pontiac logo printed over here on the side. Show up with a college football tailgate with an Aztek cooler, and you're instantly the coolest person there. Now, when you open it up, you will notice that it's actually pretty big, and according to the owner, it does a pretty good job of keeping drinks cool, like a cooler should. And if you don't want to use it as a cooler, inside it's more versatile than that. It has CD storage, various CD slots, and it even has coin storage. General Motors was thinking when they made this cooler. Okay, so I'm back inside the car. I'm done with my cooler. I've put it back in the center console, and you remember that Pontiac logo I mentioned? Well, check this out. That logo locks the cooler into place in the center console. Admit it, that's sort of interesting. But while a rear bench in the tailgate is cool and a cooler in the middle is cool, nothing says versatile like a tent. Yes, that's right, the Aztek came with an optional tent. And yes, this one has it. Here it is, all set up, including the awning. Now, I've spared you of having to watch this get put together, but needless to say, it only took us 10-15 minutes to do it. There's just a bunch of clips on that side, on the roof rack and the wheel well, and it just kind of sticks right in like you'd expect a tent to. In fact, it seems like a very reasonable, legitimate tent, except that it's hanging out the back of a Pontiac Aztek in the parking lot of a middle school. Come, take a tour of my tent, will you? I'll start back here with, yes, the awning, which is stuck in the ground with stakes, just like you do if you were going camping. Right now, I'm sitting on one of the rear seats, which I took out so I can just hang out in my awning in the shade and bask in the glow of my Aztek. Now, when you get up to the tent itself, you'll notice a couple things. First off, the giant A logo on the side and the Aztek logo under the awning, in case there's any question of what car you're driving that has a tent installed in the back of it. When you want to climb inside, you simply unzip this whole thing, and you get back here to find the pièce de résistance. That would be the Aztek air mattress with Aztek logo on it. You can climb back here and sleep to your heart's content inside your Aztek. Now, once you're inside your Aztek, sleeping on your wonderful Aztek branded air mattress under your Aztek branded tent, you have a couple of cool inside the tent options. For example, up here, there's a little storage area where you can put your stuff. Bears won't find it up there. And there's also a couple of windows in here in case you want to let in the night sky so you can gaze at the stars from the beauty of your Aztek. Ah. Now, when you're done with your tent and your mattress, you can just stow them inside this thing, this giant tray that sits inside the cargo area. Now, with the seat out, it's a little bit difficult to access your rear tray. But Pontiac thought of that. Just push here, pull it on out, and then you have easy access to your tent and your mattress over here and whatever else you want to store over here in this little netted area. When you're done with it, just push it right back in. And of course, you can throw regular cargo items on top of it. Now, in order to get the tent in, you have to remove this thing, and it's kind of cumbersome, but check this out. There's wheels in the bottom, so you can just kind of... And the quirky Aztek versatility goes well beyond the big stuff like the tent and the mattress and the rear bench and the cooler. There's also some interesting little things. Like, for example, in the roof up here, you have a sunglass holder. A lot of cars have that, but this one has 2 sunglass holders. You probably don't have that in your Camry. And then there's my favorite little Aztek versatility quirk. Inside the glove box door, you will find a built-in tissue holder in case you get sneezy while you're driving your Aztek. And the storage versatility doesn't end there. If you don't want your cargo just rolling around in the back here, maybe if you want to hide it from view, check these out. There's little pockets in the side of the cargo area where you can stick stuff, and then you can just close it right up so it won't get wet or damaged, and no one will really even know it's there. Another cool feature, the windshield washers don't come from the hood, but rather from the wipers themselves to maximize their effectiveness. It's brilliant, and it should be in all cars. Here it is in slow motion so you can get a better look at how these things work. But despite all the cool, versatile features in the Aztek, there are a few items in this car that aren't quite so beneficial and go from weird to downright annoying. For example, the fuel door just sits there, exposed and not lockable. If you ever become really angry with an Aztek owner, well, it's not that hard to exact your revenge. The control for the power mirrors just sits on the door, and it's completely unlabeled. The gauge cluster refuses to tell you what your tire pressures are, it just tells you that they're normal. Unlike every other SUV with a folding rear seat, the Aztek's back seats fold directly in half, meaning anytime you want to put down the seats and carry a large item, the middle seat becomes unavailable, and the Aztek becomes a car for 3. And speaking of that middle seat, its seatbelt comes out from an asymmetrical and rather odd hump in the ceiling. Then there is, of course, the styling, the absolutely bizarre double hood design that makes the Aztek look like it has 4 front grills, or the large front overhang that makes it look like it has a huge beak, or how about the giant split rear glass with a huge visibility-destroying bar directly across the middle of your rear window. And finally, there's the best hidden quirk. Pontiac never actually got rid of the plastic cladding. I never knew this. I always knew the 2001 Aztek had that gray plastic on the bottom, and later Azteks were all one color painted. But as you can see, they never actually changed the material, they just started painting the plastic. And it looks very mismatched when you get up close. But let's go back to the Aztek's appearance for a second. That is obviously one of its most unique traits. These days, every crossover looks about the same, a function of crash safety regulations and interior packaging and fuel economy wind tunnel testing and aerodynamics, and everything has just gotten dull. The cool cars are the ones that stand out, and that includes the Aztek, even though it's a little bit weird looking. This car got a huge bump in popularity when it was featured in Breaking Bad, and I wouldn't be surprised if someday people start to really appreciate the Aztek, just like people are starting to buy those old boxy Volvos that everybody thought was really ugly when I was a kid. It also helps that you can't really go wrong buying an Aztek. The average asking price on AutoTrader right now for an Aztek is just $3,600. plus whatever the tent costs. Speaking of AutoTrader, go to autotrader.com/oversteer for more of my thoughts on the Aztek. Right now, time to get it out on the road. All right, so we're driving the Aztek now. I'm flooring it. You know, it accelerates. Here's a nice little bend here. Oh, yeah, it's got some body roll. It's exactly as I expected. It's not that fast, and it's not a performance car, and that's kind of the reality. One of them is this grab handle, which is just hilarious. Can't believe that's a real item inside an Aztek. It's got a nice floaty ride to it, which is bad when you're going on corners, but it's a 45-mile-an-hour road without, you know, stoplights, whatever, and so it actually just feels kind of nice and cushy, which is about what I'm looking for. This one day, someone will be in 2040, someone will be driving along in a modern futuristic car that drives itself, and they'll see an Aztek on the end and they'll be like, oh, Aztek. It drives like you'd expect it to. It drives like a car. That, you know, there's not really that much surprise to this car in terms of the driving experience. But I mean, that was part of the thing with this car. General Motors had to build it on an existing platform. And so even though it's got all this weirdness that I've already gone through inside of it and all these weird versatile features and some kind of cool stuff, they then had to fit it onto an existing powertrain, platform, transmission, and so at the end of the day, it was always going to kind of just drive like a General Motors vehicle. Everything seems reasonable. The visibility is pretty good. Those weird angled back windows don't harm things that bad. Like this bar is starting to annoy me more and more. As I look back there, I can see what's directly behind me, which is helpful. This bar in the window and back. But I notice it is obscuring what's like way back there. So I can only see maybe 100 feet behind me, and then the rest of the road is kind of cut off. When we're going down a hill and the back of the car is pointed towards the sky, it really kind of screws things up. You can't see anything. Yeah, so the wind noise is coming off the roof racks. Other than that, the car is reasonably quiet. In fact, I'm surprised how little tire and road noise there is. It's reasonably quiet, especially for a 15-year-old, well, this one's only 12, but the Aztek being a 15-year-old General Motors car, you'd think that cost $23,000 or whatever. And this car is just in such good shape. So this one only has 78,000 miles, which is, in Aztek world, is nothing. I was on AutoTrader this morning looking at them, and they all have 150, 180,000 miles. Actually, a nice, reasonably comfortable ride. The seats feel nice and comfortable. GM at this time was focused more on like comfort and smoothness and ease of operation than anything else. I think the large buttons are hilarious. The large, terrible plastic buttons are hilarious. It's so funny how far GM has come. The coolest thing about this car, the driving experience is relatively normal. It feels like a car, like you'd expect. The coolest thing about this car is that you're just driving an Aztek, and so you know you're driving down the road and there's opinion-splitting, bizarre, weird, potentially cool, kind of enthusiastic car. So that's the Aztek. Ugly? Certainly. Weird? You bet. But there's a certain appeal to a bright orange, highly versatile crossover with unique styling in a world where everything else kind of looks the same. Plus, it includes a tent. And now, on to the Doug score. Starting with the weekend categories and styling, I think this car is aging fine, especially among today's crop of lookalike crossovers, but I'm trying to be objective here, and I know most of you don't think that. The Aztek is routinely named one of the ugliest cars ever made, and so it gets a 2 out of 10, just shy of a 1 because, really, at least it's interesting. Next up is acceleration. It does 0 to 60 in 9.4 seconds, which gives it a 1 out of 10. Handling is bad. Body roll, slow steering, exactly what you'd expect. It gets a 3 out of 10. For cool factor, the Aztek is starting to grow on me. Check the title of this video. But the category takes into account how the general public feels, and if you show up at a valet stand in an Aztek, they'll hide it in the corner of the parking lot, facing the other direction. It's still seriously uncool to most people, and it gets a 2 out of 10. Finally, importance. They made thousands of Azteks, thousands too many, some would say, but it's a significant car in the sense that it's emblematic of General Motors' odd and questionable decisions from this era. I think it earns an easy 7 out of 10. I know that's a high score, but everyone knows this car. It's still talked about all the time, and I've always said this category is basically a measure of whether you'd put it in a museum, and I think the Aztek would easily earn a spot in my car museum. Still, that doesn't do much for it. Gets a measly 15 out of 50 in the weekend categories, the worst score yet. Next up are the daily categories that measure how much you'd like to drive the car every day. Starting with features and equipment, the Aztek is undoubtedly low on technology, but it obviously has some cool stuff that prevents it from getting a truly terrible score, so it earns a 4 out of 10. Luxury measures comfort and smoothness. The Aztek is a little bit more comfortable than average, but wind noise from its factory roof racks knocks it right down to an average score of 5 out of 10. Quality measures materials and reliability. Reliability is strong, but materials are pretty mediocre, characteristic of cheap General Motors cars from that era. It earns a 4 out of 10. Practicality is strong. The Aztek has 93 cubic feet of cargo space and a freaking tent, easily earning it a 10 out of 10. Finally, there's value. This is a kooky, odd car that stands out from the normal SUV pack. It's low on tech and performance, but high on specialness, more than just about any other car for $3,500. Then again, it's also a low-grade GM car, and most people wouldn't pay a penny for that ugly face, so I'll be safe and stick with a 5 out of 10, giving it a total daily score of 28 out of 50. Yes, the Pontiac Aztek is a better daily driver than the Lexus LFA. This shouldn't be surprising. Anyway, add them together, and the final Pontiac Aztek Doug score is a fairly respectable 43 out of 100. It only beats out the Cadillac ELR, largely due to the Aztek's practicality and its affordable pricing. Aztek bed.